The year is 1996, and my wife and I are walking through our church, and we're probably fashionably dressed. My hair is probably feathered. Gauchos, whatever was fashionable at the time. And she sees a little note on like a bulletin board about this course called Genesis. This is a course for pre-married couples or early married couples, and it deals with topics like communication and conflict and in-laws and finances, the type of thing that Laura and I like to talk about, and some of the things we'll be talking about today in this podcast. And so she then remarks to me,
I want to go.
And I say, nah. But she says,
I really want to go.
So finally, I decide after she grabs my ear
we're going.
and pulls me into this course, right? I go in, my ear's quite red, and I look around, and the other guys also have red ears, so I know I'm in good company. But it was amazing. This care pastor just pouring into couples in the early stages of their marriage, teaching them about things that you wouldn't learn any other place. And it was so foundational for the two of us to set our marriage on a biblical foundation. And so I'm so glad that we were a part of it. Not only that, but these friends that we still have today with amazing marriages. And so it's a real testimony to this care pastor just pouring into people. And I think it sparked for us a little bit of a desire to do the same thing. So that's the early part of our story.
Yes. So let me introduce us. I'm Laura, and this is Trevor. We've been married for 28 years. We have 3 adult children, and we have our little puppy, Cozy, and she's 2 years old and keeps us very busy. And like Trevor said, us going through that class and what I just think a few years back when we became empty nesters, we just thought we want to do the same thing that care pastor did. And we just saw the difference. And then I started, we went to marriage conferences, and then I started reading books, and we had amazing mentors, and it just kept snowballing. And we've met with hundreds of couples and just kind of see their marriages having a firm foundation, and them just going, where do we learn this stuff? And where do you learn these things?
Yeah, that's right. You know, we started with something called SYMBIS. That stands for Save Your Marriage Before It Starts. And it's a couple takes an assessment, and then we sit down with them over the course of 3 weeks, and we walk through this assessment, and we pour into them some of these things that SYMBIS teaches and some of the things that we've learned.
And each one's kind of personal, of kind of like what their background is, different ways they spend money. And
that's exactly right. And then we also host something called the pre-marriage course. And this is where couples get together in a more group setting. At least the 50 or so couples who gather together, have a meal together, and then watch kind of a video series. But then they sit side by side to discuss things about their background and their feelings about marriage. And it brings up sometimes things from their past, conversations that they need to talk through to set things off on the right foundation. And so, as Laura probably indicated, we're very much marriage nerds, right? Now, this is not our training. We're not counselors. In fact, we train to be actors.
Yes.
So that was our background, is doing theater, doing film and TV. So you might have caught us on something somewhere along the line. Yeah. And then we also participate in things like VBS,
yes,
right?
We have great fun. Yeah.
That's right. And so, as marriage nerds, I recall, to illustrate this story a little more, we actually went to a marriage conference around this time last year, and I was getting us all sort of checked in, and Laura went over to the book table where there were all these books about marriage spread out, and there was a deal. It was like 4 books for $40 or something like that. Pretty good deal. Yeah. So I go over to her after I kind of get us, checked in, and she's like almost hyperventilating, and I said, "Are you okay, babe?" And she's like, "I'm so excited, I can't choose," right? Yeah. I mean, that's how passionate we are for pouring into couples in the early stage of their marriage. And so as marriage nerds...
we love the name Tools for Marriage. When we were trying to kind of decide what to call this, as we were reading books, as we were figuring out these things, we just thought, these are little tools. These are things that you can do today. And I mean, there's just so many experts, so many wonderful books. We're going to tag the books. We have wonderful mentors where we just learn things like, oh, this is so good. And as we have continued to do this, our marriage has gotten stronger. And like Trevor said, we're just marriage nerds. I have books everywhere, and it's just exciting. We've had a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the most important books that we lean on is the Bible, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, God was the one who created this concept of marriage, right?
Yes.
The two shall leave their father and mother and cleave together and become one flesh. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but really that's the source through which we're so passionate about, and we really want to set relationships off on the right foundation. And in fact, the data bears this out, right? The study recently shows that if you go through some sort of premarital education, there's a 31% less chance of divorce. I mean, that's huge, right? And so, I mean, SYMBIS right now is it's like $35 or something like that. And we just say, that's the best money you'll ever spend.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
It's amazing. And, when you think about it, the goal is not just to not get divorced. I mean, in some way today we'd say, wow, you've been married 28 years and you haven't gotten a divorce, well done, right? But we want to elevate it. We want to take it a level higher because it's really about a marriage that thrives.
That's right.
That's
Beginning with the end in mind. Do you know that you kind of go, what do I want our marriage to look like in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? And so like Trevor said, it's like how you're growing closer to be more in love at the end than you are today. And it's possible. I think that just being intentional, we're going to talk about ways to connect. I think as you figure out how to communicate, conflict, those kind of putting those in action, I think it can change everything. I really do.
That's right. And what we want to do is we want to grab couples right at the beginning, as early as we possibly can.
Yes.
So, imagine a rocket, right? Bound for space, and it's 1 degree off of where it needs to go. I mean, it's not going to get anywhere near its destination, right? So you want to make sure that you're headed in the right direction. When you think about what does it want to look like in when we're 80 years old, right? You know those couples that you see in the park and they're holding hands. They look like newlyweds.
Yes.
You just see this joy in the way that they look at one another. Everybody who's getting married goes, yeah, that's what I want, right?
Yes.
So again, get yourself on that right trajectory. And then even if you start on the right trajectory, we just naturally drift, right? We drift towards selfishness. We drift towards maybe doing our own thing, not serving one another. Right. And so it's important to just continue to course correct. However far your particular rocket ship of your life has gotten off track, God can bring you back, right? He can bring you back. And so that's what we want to do. We want to pour into marriages in that early stage, and to be intentional about it.
Yeah, and we're excited about this podcast. We're going to bring in some couples to interview. We want to talk to experts. I just, as we continue listening and growing, it's just exciting for us to keep learning and to start this. It's been really exciting for us.
For sure.
So, yeah.
So, the interesting thing is that when we talk about oneness, we're going to talk through some things around communication and conflict and commitment. Some of it we'll cover in this episode and some in future episodes, but it's really about the two becoming one, right? In this life, your marriage is the closest relationship that you have, right? This is my ministry, is Laura, and I'm hers, right? And so we want to become one. And if you think about it, this being the closest relationship on earth, some might argue, and they may say, no, I really think that that's maybe the relationship between a parent and a child, or a mother and a child. After all, I'll probably continue to thrive or to exist, if you will, if she doesn't pay any attention to me. Whereas a baby, not so much.
Right.
But if you think about your goal with a child, that goal is independence.
Right.
That means
you're raising adults.
Yes, that you're trying to teach this child to not have to rely on you any further. And so you're pushing actually away as you continue to raise them. Whereas in a marriage relationship, you're drawing ever closer.
Yes.
That idea and that concept of oneness. I want to be curious about her. I want to get to know her even more deeply, to just continue to discover the woman that God made.
Right.
And so that's...
Yeah, we notice, I think it just naturally happens, is you're raising your kids, you're worried with work. All these different things come in and the marriage starts going aside. It's like, oh, like Trevor said, it's like, oh, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. And do you know, the kids grow up. The work might go away. These different things. And so kind of saying, this is my person. This is the person I want to love. This is the person I get to do life. We just are like, you get to do life with your best friend.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, the kids, I mean, what a gift you're giving them by having a strong marriage, by them being able to see a model of a strong, loving marriage. You know, my joke is, hey, we can always make more of you, right? So you really just want to pour into your marriage, even as a gift to your children. And how many have that, where they can look at their father and mother and say, wow, I grew up in a home where I admired the marriage that was modeled in front of me. Sadly, that's not the case for many, many people. And so we hope that you can be that.
And it's not people's fault.
Right.
Do you know?
Yes.
I mean, a lot of times it's like, and Trevor and I will readily say that we did not start out on a perfect, it was not perfect.
That's right.
That throughout the years, we've continued with things that we've had to work through. And so no marriage is perfect. Yeah. And so I don't think it's anything we can claim of like, oh, we did this to make our marriage better. Right. It really was the foundation. And then we have a lot of fun together. I think that's one thing in marriage is being friends, having fun, laughing, hanging out, finding, we always talk about as actors, we're constantly rehearsing, auditioning, and that's just been something we've had a lot of fun with.
Yeah, I mean, it's great if you have, you know, shared passions and things that you enjoy doing together, but it's also important through the years to continue to do those things. You know, it's very easy, obviously, when you're dating and you're showing your best self to do things together and to form those new memories. And then sometimes, sadly, you get into a situation where sometimes you can start to live parallel lives. And we see that happen, you know, where people get to the point of their kids leaving the house and they sort of look at one another and they think, I don't really even know you. Is it worth even staying together? And we just, we'd love to just see that, you know, a lot of that just not happen as marriages just get stronger and stronger through the years. So
one thing when we talk to couples that we've learned through these last couple of years is that you're starting a new family, that it's not that two become one, like Trevor said. And so you are becoming a new family. You get to write your script, that you too get to decide what Christmas looks like, Thanksgiving looks like, to sit knee to knee and say what's best for us, what works best for us. And that can be very difficult because, I mean, we have adult children, and of course, both sides want to spend time with their kids. And, but I think it's just so powerful to cling to one another, to realize that you are one family. I just think that's one thing that I think really can help a relationship, is that. So,
that's right. So we're going to talk a little bit about a few of the tools that we've learned over the years that we think are super, super helpful. They're in no particular order, but one of them is one that you may have heard of. It's, you know, hugely popular, and it's called love languages, right? And if you don't know your partner's love language, your new, you know, bride, your new husband or wife, if you don't know their love language, my suggestion is go online, take a free test at their website. It's
5lovelanguages.com.
That's right. I think it's the number free. 5. Yeah,
right.
It's a free test. So you have no excuse. Go figure it out, right? And figure out what your own is. There's something to be said about knowing, oh yeah, I actually know what makes me tick. And then communicate that to the other person, right?
Know.
This whole idea of mind reading, this seems to come up as a theme.
We're not mind readers.
That's right. I mean, if you're a mind reader, hey by
let
all
us
means,
know.
use those skills and teach me how to do it. But otherwise, it's all about communication. It's all about saying, you know, listen, for my birthday coming up, this is really what I want to happen. Otherwise, you have in your head, boy, this is exactly how it's going to work. And then for some reason, it doesn't go that way.
And you're just frustrated with the other person. So yes, to say, and I know it doesn't feel very romantic. It's like, well, they should know what I want. But I think it's so important to say, I'd like it to look like this. Can you do this? Can you do this? Because most of the time, like, I'll do that. Right. I love you. I want it to be the best. And early in your marriage, you kind of go, you kind of are giving the person clues, and it might change over time, but just not expecting the other person to have to be a mind reader, to talk, to communicate.
And I think love language is at the heart of that, right? So I'll go through the love languages quick. They're words of affirmation, right? This is things like, you know, good job, I'm so proud of you. That's right. Yep. And then acts of service, right? You want to talk about acts of service at all? 'Cause this one's yours or was, right?
Right. Well, first, I mean, I think words of affirmation.
That's at the top of your list?
Overall. Okay. You know, I just need to hear, good job, and you're doing a good job, and thank you for this. Those kind of things really mean a lot. When my kids were younger, I had 3 little kids, and definitely acts of service was huge for me.
Yeah.
I mean, just being able to say, hey, I'll take care of this. You go have coffee. I'll handle this. Those kind of things meant a lot to me. So yeah, and it can change over time.
Right.
So,
Laura, I just want to say you're doing a great job on this
Thanks
podcast.
so much.
Yeah,
All right.
The other one, of course, is physical touch, right?
Yes.
This doesn't need to be, it can be non-sexual touch even, just rubbing and
Yes.
hug and cuddling, and then quality time, right? Meaningful conversations, being fully present. You know, a lot of times you're on your phone,
Yes.
yeah, babe, yeah, whatever, but you're not really paying attention. So quality time is one. And then receiving gifts. This isn't for me, a big deal, but for some, even not expensive, just a little
Yes.
card. I picked up this little knickknack. I bought you your favorite candy bar or your favorite soda. I mean, that can just speak
And just that
volumes
you're
to someone.
thinking of them.
Right.
Those are just little like, oh, I saw this. This reminded me of a thing that we laughed about in the past.
Right. So if you haven't, gone and taken the sort of assessment to figure out which one, or it doesn't immediately come to mind which one it is for you, I'd encourage you to do that and then share it with your partner. Hey,
Yes.
I want to let you know this is the one that's at the top of my list. We probably all have all of these.
Yeah,
to
you
certain
want a little of all of them.
But
right.
there's probably one that bubbles to the top.
Yes.
And so find out, what yours is, and find out what your partner's is. And then it's like a cheat code
It is.
in a way.
Yeah.
Someone is telling you, here's how you can show me love. And the hard thing, of course, is when that's not your love language. You're like,
Yes.
well, she speaks
Different
German.
languages.
Right.
This
She
is-
speaks German and I speak English. And so it's really hard because I don't really speak her language. But if I try, if I even,
Yes.
throw in a few German words, it's like, oh, wow, look at
understand
you.
that.
Given the effort to speak my language.
Yeah,
So that's a big
and
one.
One thing that I think is really sweet is with words of affirmation. I think this is good for any couple of just writing down just something you love about them, how they're a blessing to you, just of keeping a list. And I know that's so good for each other that you just every once in a while just say, hey, this is something I noticed you did. This is something I really love about you. Really means a lot. So I know for Trevor, and it's almost like we put it on a calendar. Do you know, or it's
A
like
reminder
a
or something.
reminder.
Yeah.
Of like, do you know? And for me, it's just rubbing Trevor's back, holding his hand. I mean, those little things. To me, it's not as important, but to him, that's how he feels love.
Yeah,
So
that's right. And I'll go off on a tangent a little bit.
All right.
What you're developing is you're developing a heart of gratitude, right? An affirmation. You're looking for positive things. And the research shows that the more you look out for positive
Yes.
things rather than being critical about things, it's so easy to look and be critical about things.
Yes.
The more you sort of train yourself to think about the positive things, the more you'll continue to think
That's
about
right.
the positive things, right?
Yes.
And wouldn't you want your partner to be looking at you and
Yes.
thinking about those attributes about you that they really enjoy, even if they're not speaking them? They're actually like, oh, I noticed that. I
Yes.
really see this in you, right? So just going and writing
Yes.
down a list and adding to that list is a muscle that you can actually train over time.
Yeah, and you're speaking life into the other person. I mean, words are important, and if it's always you're just finding the wrong thing they're doing, I mean, just to speak life and say thank you and gratitude, and it does just change things. We also talk about making your home a refuge. I mean, it is a place where there is gratefulness, there is kindness, there is
Fun. Right?
Yes,
Laughter.
fun. That's right.
Yeah.
And if there is a conflict, if you're starting to get upset, it's like, hey, let's go for a walk. Let's get out of the house. Let's go to a coffee shop.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come home, it's like, I'm excited to be home. This is the world is tough out there, as we know. And so just having a place where somebody loves you, that they're excited to see you. We talk, the Gottmans have talking about a kiss, physical touch, when you first come in, hugging each other. That those kind of things are just so powerful to us.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's awesome. The other one we talk about a little bit is just an intentional time together every day. We just call it like couch time, right? It's just 10 to 15 minutes. It's not it's not a big thing, but you're intentional. You just do it all the time, right?
Right.
And so you just sit down, knee to knee or next to one another, and you go, hey, how's your day? You're putting aside the phone. You're turning off the TV for a moment, and when you get kids, you're saying, hey, mom and dad,
this is our time. Yes,
couch time together, right? They might be even observing this taking place, but they understand understand and know this is something that they do on a regular basis, right? And so if something's coming up that's sort of bothering you, what a beautiful place to sort of sit down in an intentional time together and just say, hey, I'm feeling this, and maybe you didn't mean this, but this is how I felt. Just a chance to, it's almost a pressure release valve, if you will. When something starts to build up, this couch time can be that little pressure release valve, right? That helps you sort of restore that oneness. And so couch time is something that we would encourage you to do and continue to do right now. And with these young couples, a lot of them, I mean, they're saying, listen, we want to spend, we want to spend 24 hours a day together, and we're all about it. That's awesome, right? But you know that those fumes, to a certain extent, they're only going to take you so far. And so what you want to do is you want to reignite, you want to pop up. And one of the ways that you do that is connecting with one another, sharing your heart with one another. So couch time is one of the ways that you can do that.
Also, walk around the block. So sitting on the couch is one thing, but to just say, hey, after dinner, we're going to walk around the block together. We're going to have that time. Sometimes being able to shoulder and talking about the day, plus you lower glucose levels, I've heard.
Well, there you go.
Eat. So a whole double thing there. So
so there was a story actually related to someone, serving their spouse, right? This is a guy, and his marriage was falling apart, and he was trying to figure out what to do. And so he was counseled. He said, tomorrow I just want you to go, and I want to ask you to ask your wife, how can I make your day better? Right? So he wakes up the next day, says, how can I make your day better? And she says, clean the garage.
Yeah, she was kind of like, well, what's up?
Yeah, maybe acts of service were her love language. In any case, he goes and he, cleans the garage. Next day, wakes up, how can I make your day better? And she's like, I don't clean the kitchen, whatever. How can I make your day better? He continues to ask her day after day after day, just following through on what she's asking, right? And it softened her heart, right? That sort of heart of stone was softened. And eventually she turned to him and she said, I should be asking you the same. How can I make your day better? And, they say to this day, they continue to have an amazing marriage as they continue to ask each other every day, how can I make your day better?
How can I help? Those little things these are just little things that shows your love, little connections with one another.
That's right. So then date night, right? This is something that in early married or pre-married, this is probably happening on a regular basis as you kind of woo each other, right? And as you get close to your big day. But we want to encourage you to continue that even when you get married, right? I mean, there's something about that day, the tux and the wedding day and everything else.
Yes.
So exciting and such an adventure, just really a starting line for the rest of your relationship. But, oftentimes we get comfortable, and there's nothing wrong with that. Certainly the idea of just being in your sweats and hanging out together on the couch or watching TV together, you've got a built-in friend. It's awesome. It's awesome, right? But this idea of like, well, now I never need to dress up again. I never need to really woo you again because I've already won you. Like the challenge is done. Certainly for a guy, this idea of like, oh, I've won her heart and now I'm done. Right?
Yeah.
And so do I need to put in any effort? And the answer is yes, you do. You need to continue to woo. And that means doing a date night. And we got some ideas.
Putting it on every week,
That's
setting that side a time.
Yep. And we suggest, that you might switch off who plans the date, right? So it's not always his responsibility or her responsibility, right?
Yeah.
That you go and you make the reservation. And again, we understand it's expensive.
Yes.
So it doesn't always need to be, concert and a dinner. I mean, just a little picnic lunch, in the park, walking the dog, there's things that you can do together. You can call your date night, right? Maybe you're making something at home and then you go out and enjoy a dessert in a restaurant, right?
Yeah, that was something I really had heard is that, I mean, it costs a lot to go out to dinner these days. So to eat at home and then to go out to a nice place and share a dessert together. And then you get to dress up. It doesn't cost a lot of money, but I thought that's kind of a good idea where it's not as expensive, but absolutely. I just think that's something, someone said, you schedule going to gym, getting your hair done, get like this, putting it on the schedule, keeping that ongoing throughout your marriage.
Yep. And so speaking of scheduling, sometimes what can happen is your dates and your, couch time even can just be syncing your schedule, that you're like just sitting there working on this, when's this trip and when's this thing. And it doesn't really connect you at the heart level, right? Your schedules are in sync perhaps, and that may be important, but we would suggest that you separate this out. And I think it was Doug Fields at Marriage Matters where we learned this idea of a sort of a business meeting, right? It's a summit. You're just sort of sitting down with the other person and you're sort of saying, all right, what does this look like? And when's our trip? And how do we plan around this? What does the budget look like? How are we doing on this thing? You're just kind of taking care of business and running a household, right? Because you want that to run smoothly and avoid disagreement where you can. So the idea of having this business meeting where you get in sync, that's right.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you don't have to bring that into your date or into your couch time. That can be more of an intentional connection of the heart time.
Yeah. Schedules syncing up, who can do what. I think that makes it a lot easier where it's just set aside one day a week.
Yeah. And then we encourage trips together, right? Again, it can be costly. And so these things are things that you need to plan. Sometimes things get busy. So Laura and I have to put these trips way out on the calendar and then plan around them. You know, it's not something we're like, well, why don't we take a nice weekend trip? You know, it's like there's just always something going on. But if you're intentional about it, and you say, okay, you know, once a year, we're going to try and take a trip. Right. And then you sort of plan when and where that's going to, and you carve around, you have something to look forward to together. And I tell you, there is something magical about going on a trip with Laura, right?
Yes.
The laundry, the concerns about the kids, the dishes, there's just some stuff she can't physically do or worry about. So it allows her then to experience new food and to experience nature and just to connect, right?
Like, who are you? And just like, this is fun. There aren't really schedules and things that you get to have to worry about. You just get to have that time together. Making it romantic, I think, is absolutely something I think for our marriage has been so
huge.
powerful.
Right.
Yeah, huge.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then we want to encourage you to do marriage retreats, right? If you're in Southern California, in the Orange County area, Marriage Matters is awesome. You know, Doug Fields is hilarious, but he's always gives you
some great books,
practical information. Yeah. If you're not in the area, you know, check out some of the books that he has available. But we want to encourage you to look around. There's typically a church or another group nearby that's doing these things on a regular basis. And again, you can kind of combine this idea of the sort of the date side of things, the intentional part of things, and maybe the trip all in one sort of thing where you are thinking about and focusing on the relationship that you have. So we want to encourage you to do that where you can.
And kind of a new one I heard of is, we were trying to think of the name. We've heard like State of the Union for the family and stuff, but I came up with the Marriage Summit. And Trevor calls our house Castle Black. Our last name's Black. So this is all brand new. The Castle Black Marriage Summit. And so just the idea of once a month, sitting down, pulling and saying, hey, what are some things we really need to talk about? Right. Like setting aside like an hour and just saying, hey, this is frustrating. And then also going, hey, where do we want where do we want to go? What direction is a family? Let's dream. What is some trips that you want to go to? Are there some classes you want to take? Do you want to take art? Do you of just finding out who the other person is and say, hey, how can I support you in that? Right. How can I think sometimes you're just so into work and kids. There's the time to go, do you know what? I've always wanted to try, I mean, who knows what you want, an art, a sport. And the other person going, okay, yeah, let's set that up. Yeah, I
like that. I mean, the idea of dreaming together, I think is so important. And, you know, in the business world, obviously they're doing these quarterly planning meetings or annual planning meetings, right? Like, how are we doing against what we said we were going to do, and what are we going to do sort of moving forward? And so to take that and be intentional about where are we in our relationship and where do we want to go and how do we get there, right? And then listening to each other in terms of what you want to do, what dreams and goals you might have, and how I can support you in that way, right?
And the other thing we love is being each other's cheerleader, being proud of them, being the one who's like, you can do it. I'm so proud of you, and speaking life like we talked about before. So you want to tell your story?
Yeah, sure.
Cheerleading.
Right. So this was, I had an opportunity to be on a TV show, just a small role in this particular one. And it was the last day and my scene went really well. The director laughed. Everybody, just felt great. It couldn't have gone better. Right. And so I was super excited, just on cloud nine, but I was more excited actually to walk back to my car, set my GPS, get back on the freeway and call Laura, and tell her, and she didn't like, oh, I'm kind of busy, can't talk now, we'll talk when you get home or whatever. She was like, okay, tell me how it goes. Tell me everything, right? And I just got to relive this sort of play-by-play with my person, right? Yeah. What an amazing cheerleader she is for me. It's just listen to my story and just rejoice right alongside me that the day went well. It's awesome. And so be that person, when they say, oh, I got this big meeting coming up and I'm a little nervous about it. And then, how did the meeting go? Tell me what happened. What did they say? What was the feedback? I mean, to be there. And sometimes the meeting was awful. I fell apart, right? You're still a cheerleader.
That's
whether or not your team wins or lose, you're still wearing your cheerleading outfit. So now what, right? You still support your team, whether they win or they lose. You're wearing the same jersey color, right? And so you go, oh, I need to support them in this time. I'm still a cheerleader for them. You'll get them next time, right?
Yeah. Another thing there's a Love and Respect book that's wonderful. I highly recommend it. But cherishing your wife, loving your wife, that you cannot cherish her too much, of saying she's beautiful. I just think that with society and with women, it's fake images that it's like they're glossy. I mean, and so you're picking on yourself. You have this, you're critical of yourself. And so to tell the other person, I mean, and I just think for women, definitely for men also, but just that you cherish. And that's been something with Trevor. I mean, 3 kids, some really tough times in my life. He always made me feel beautiful. Always, I don't know. So I just think that's really important. We're going to get older. We're going to look different. It's really about the soul, who that other person is, of not focusing on the outer, of how they look. We were at some marriage conference and they're like, what would we say to the other person? It's like, well, how can I tell them they need to cover their gray hairs? And Trevor, like, really? I mean, is this what we're worried about? So finding.
And a lot of guys, this idea of cherish is kind of like, I don't really know what that means, right? But if you had, your first car, right? Whether it's a new car or not, like, I know how to cherish this thing. I'm going to put the good gas in it, make sure I park away from all the other cars so it doesn't get scratched. I'm going to invite my friend, check this out, right? Pop the hood, you know how to cherish something, right? And so then why not, your spouse? Why not your wife, right? Think of all the critical voices that advertising is feeding her, that the enemy is feeding her, and that she maybe even be feeding herself, just talking. You need to try to counteract that, right? Now, ultimately, her fulfillment and her whole self needs to be focused on God to get her fulfillment, right? And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But you're such a big part of that in pointing her to the Lord, and in also just being the voice of truth, in speaking truth into her. And there's no better way than to tell her she's beautiful and that you care about her, that you see her character and who she is in her heart, and just continue to do that. There's never going to be a point at which she's like, taps out, stop loving me, you're just loving me too much. It's just not going to happen, right? And so we need to just continue to do that.
And then cheering our husbands on, the man they are. Like I said, speaking life into them. I just think that's so powerful for men, of just knowing that the person they love most is proud of them and who they are. So, all right, we're going to get into, sorry,
go ahead. I was just going to say, we've heard someone say like, well, I love him, but I don't respect him. Right? And it's like, it doesn't really work like that, right? At the very heart, of someone, you're saying, I appreciate who you are. I love who you are as a man, what you do for me or what you do for our family or what you do for work. It matters. It means something. I mean, there's nothing better than just being filled up by someone who cares about you and sees the work that you do and how much you care about them and your family, right?
So one of the tools that Laura and I talk a bit about is how to handle an issue when it comes up, right? It's bound to happen that an issue comes up. And the big question is how you handle it, right? So when a big issue comes up, whether it's an issue between the two of you or whether it's just an issue that one of you has, the most important thing is to keep the issue. And if we have an issue between the two of us, we can't see each other, we're fighting over it, right? A lot of times what will happen is we might escalate that issue from the issue itself into attacks on each other's character. You always, you never, or we might drag other issues into play, or we might even escalate that to the relationship level. Well, I don't know why I'm with you in the first place. So the important tool here is to keep the issue. What you want to do is imagine this issue moving out onto the table in front of you. Immediately, it's going to get smaller, right? The two of you can then move side by side. You recognize that you're wearing the same jersey colors, you're on the same team, and now you can focus on discussing the issue. Come up with a win-win solution, not a win-lose or a lose-lose solution. In fact, when you come up with a solution, it's not something that needs to be set in stone either. You can come up with a number of different ideas on how to deal with this particular one issue at a time, deal with this particular issue, and then come up with a plan to revisit to see if the solution that you put in place was helpful. So that's one one of our tools for the day. Keep the issue. Try not to escalate it to personal attacks or to the relationship. Put it out in front of you, move side by side, and focus on keeping the issue the issue. So one of the concepts that I want to talk about is the idea of a positive upward spiral, right? You've all heard of a negative downward spiral, where sometimes you can get into conflict with one another, and you tend to create this sort of negative downward spiral. And the opposite of that, of course, is that when you are speaking love and you're cherishing and you're speaking respect towards one another, you can start to create this kind of flywheel effect that's a positive upward spiral. So I want to encourage you through your couch time, through affirmations, through gratitude, through speaking their love language, to try in your relationship to create that positive upward spiral.
Yeah. Okay. So these are, with our couples, we feel some of the most powerful things that you can do within a relationship.
That's right. So the first concept is called an effective listening exercise, right? So a lot of times in relationships, when you get into conflict, certainly you'll stop listening. Either you're going to interrupt, or you're thinking what you want to say, or your emotions start to get the best of you, and so you're not listening to the other person. And listening is such a critical skill, right?
It's hard.
It is.
It's hard.
It can be hard. And so this kind of framework, I think, is very useful in terms of having conflict, or even just listening to the other person when they're going through something. So I'm going to explain kind of what the sort of the framework is, and then Laura and I will sort of try to model an example of this, right? So in the effective listening model, one of you is going to be the speaker and the other person is going to be the listener. So you're going to have one person hold an object, and so maybe you hold the pillow, and that says that she is the speaker, right? And I'm the listener. And it may be that you're going to switch eventually, but this is going to constantly remind me that I'm just listening. I'm not speaking at this particular time. And then I'm simply going to ask the person who's speaking, tell me something that's bothering you that you'd like to talk about. And they're going to pick a topic, and not go on too long, but a couple minutes, explaining what is going on, what's bothering them. Perhaps it relates to you, perhaps it doesn't. And you're simply going to reflect back what you heard. Just listen and then reflect back. And they'll indicate whether you actually heard them or not based on what you said, right? You're not throwing your 2 cents in. You're not trying to fix. You're not trying to say you shouldn't feel like that. You're simply reflecting back. And then you're going to ask them, you're going to peel the onion a little bit. You're going to say, what concerns you most about what you just shared with me? And they're going to share a little bit more of their heart. You're going to listen, and you're going to reflect that back. And then you're going to ask, is there anything that you'd like to do, or maybe you'd like me to do, or us to do about what you've just said? And they will speak. You will listen and you'll reflect it back. And then finally you'll say, is there anything else that you'd like to say, right? And you're simply going to listen and reflect it back. And that's it. But it's
powerful.
It's powerful. So anyway, we're going to give it a try. We're going to do a quick sort of effective listening exercise. Laura has the pillow, so she'll be the speaker. Right. And so I would say, honey, is there anything that concerns you that you'd like to talk about?
Yes. Last week I was telling you about my friend, and I was really frustrated and trying to get your attention, and you kept looking at your phone. And when I finally got your attention, you just wasn't really listening. I was like, well, what you should do this. It was like you were trying to fix it. And I just wanted you to listen. I wanted you to process.
Okay. So it sounds like then last week when you were talking with your friend, you were kind of frustrated because you were trying to talk to me about it, but I was just on my phone, so I wasn't really paying attention to you. And then when I did pay attention to you, I just tried to jump to solutions and fixes instead of just allowing you to process it.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. And so what concerns you the most about what you just shared and about what happened?
Well, I just felt it's insignificant that you just didn't care about me, that I just wasn't important to you.
Okay. So you felt that you were insignificant to me, that I wasn't treating you as important. And so by looking at my phone and not paying attention to you, that's how it made you feel. Yes. Okay. And is there anything that you want to do, or anything that you'd like me to do, or maybe something for us to do about what you've just said?
Well, I think what would be nice if maybe we had some time each night, just a few minutes, just without screens, kind of quiet, where just the two of us can talk and then try not to fix each other, because sometimes I just need to process. So I think that would help me a lot, that it would be valuable to me.
Okay. So you're saying that for us to have a few minutes each evening, and I would, set down my phone and turn off screens and just listen to you and not try to fix, that would mean a lot to you.
Yes.
Like a couch time, so to speak.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah. So
So that's kind of the idea.
framework.
It sounds like we got a little bit of a plan to put together about this
I
particular
heard it from Tools for Marriage, this little couch time thing.
Yeah. So we want to encourage you to try this out yourself, right? And it can seem odd sometimes because you're like, well, we already know how to talk, right? Or I'm not following a script, whatever. But I would just encourage you to do this. And it can be on something low stakes. In fact, you might want to start there, not something that's between the two of you that's emotionally charged, right? But something that's very, very minimal, or maybe it doesn't even connect to them, just something that you're wrestling with, you know, in a relationship with someone else or at work. And so, you know, practice that.
Yeah,
You know, strengthen
and so
that
many
muscle.
times you just want to be heard. You just want to be listened to. And once you are able to completely talk about what you want and the other person's listening and looking maybe from your point of view, they might not agree with how you're reacting, but they're all of a sudden going, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes that helps more than anything, is just have someone listen to you and not fix. I think sometimes we've heard and we've read, men a lot of times want to fix, and they're not doing this out of
malice or being mean or something, right? It's a heart of saying, oh, you've got a problem.
Let me help. I'm going to fix this.
Here's how to fix this, right? And a lot of times at work, this is what you're trying to do. Someone comes in with a problem and you go, oh, you don't just listen to it. You go and you try to fix, right? Well, one of the things that I heard about that I think is helpful is the idea of, well, so, okay, if I'm just going to listen, that means I just turn off my mind and words just flow over me and I'm not doing anything. I have to sit on my hands or turn my brain off. And the reality is, no, that's not true. But what you need to do is that the fix could be for her to feel understood.
Yeah.
So now I still need to keep my brain active. I still get to use my reasoning and my deduction, but now I just turn it into curiosity. Well, tell me more. Why do you
keep asking questions.
Right? Keep asking questions and pulling it towards you. And that way you're going to come to a deeper understanding, right? Which may alone be the solution.
That's right. And maybe with the conversation, is this a fix or a listen? And a lot of times we just want to be listened to and to process things. So another thing we found, we took you can tell all of our books, but it's How We Love. It's an incredible book. So sometimes we're mad about something and we aren't exactly able to say exactly what that feeling is. So this is on Amazon, lots of different.
A feelings pillow, I think, or a feelings wheel, right?
Yeah.
And so you can explain what you're seeing there in case people can't see it.
Yeah. So it's like if you're angry about something, like I'm really mad at you, but sometimes you can kind of go down and say, do you know what? Right then I felt insecure. And that was the exact feeling. I was infuriated. And we kind of like this idea. We heard it from someone else of kind of this can be a pillow on your couch and just to kind of have it out. So when you're kind of talking, it's like, I'm playful. I mean, whatever it is. And I felt like with our kids, these are all new tools, of course, but just to have that, I wish our kids kind of had that, to be able to identify your emotions, be able to label, gosh, this is what I'm feeling. I think it's very, very powerful. Yeah.
And I think in time, you'll come to understand, it took me a while at least to sort of think, why is it necessary for us to share our feelings, to verbalize our feelings and to talk through them? In some ways I sort of looked at that a little bit like, I don't really know if that's, but to come to an understanding of another person requires you to really unpack what's going on in their heart. And sometimes it's hard to take what's in your heart and to turn it into words. And then, of course, to turn them into words and not have the other person acknowledge them or hear them, but to simply say, you shouldn't feel like that, or here's what you should have done instead, or you're taking it too hard. And then you cram those things back down. And there's just a beautiful thing. I think How We Love talks about a comfort circle, this idea that you're bringing these feeling words, or they call them soul words, to the surface, right? The other person is reflecting them and saying, how can I help in this particular situation? And there's just beauty in being able to listen and understand your partner as you go through this process.
Okay. And then our next one that we think is so powerful is a conflict card. So you want to kind of explain that?
So the conflict card, you may not be able to read it, but it's basically a scale from 1 to 10. 1 says, I'm not enthusiastic, but it's no big deal to me. And 10 says, over my dead body, right?
So very strongly.
It's not, you don't necessarily have to know that 4 is, I don't agree, but I'll let you have your way. But you understand the concept of, how are you on this, on a scale from 1 to 10? So let's say we get in a little bit of a disagreement, right? And we just pause for a second and I say, where are you on this scale from 1 to 10, right? And if she says, I'm an 8, well, okay, I know this is a big deal. We oftentimes think that wherever we are on this conflict scale, if I'm an 8, she's an 8, right? And so sometimes you find out like, wow, she's a 6 or a 7, and I'm a 2.
Right.
So what a great chance to sort of compromise. This means more to you than it means to me.
Yeah, it's like, I don't agree, but you can have this one. This is as important to me as it is to you.
And if you determine that both of you are an 8 or a 9 or a 10 on a particular issue, it's like, okay, then we need to be mindful, right? Because obviously emotions are running high. This matters to both of us. Let's use the reflective listening exercise.
Yes.
Why don't you go first, right? Or let's take a walk as we talk about this, right? Something where you know this is important and it needs to be resolved, but it's important for you to have your mental faculties working, right? As opposed to your emotions flooding in and taking over your ability to hear what the other person is saying.
So like Trevor said, we use it a lot, not even for conflict. Right. It's like, hey, do you like this color for the walls or this? And he's like, do you know what? I'm a 2.
Yeah,
you know,
right. It matters more to you. You run.
That's right. Yeah. So it's been just amazing. So I guess we wrap it up?
Yeah. So we're going to wrap this up. We've got some other stuff, but we're excited about that because we'll have other podcasts as we continue to share more. So I'm just going to say a quick prayer of blessing to wrap this up, and then we'll go from there. Lord, we just thank you so much for this time. We thank you for this resource. We thank you for this podcast studio where we can record this. We thank you for all the great information that we've been able to learn from the Bible, but as well from all of these marriage books that we've been absorbing, Lord. And we thank you for all the people who are on the other side of this screen, be it a big or a small screen, Lord, wherever they may be hearing this, Lord. I just pray in their relationship that right now you would work, Lord, that you would unlock any forgiveness that needs to take place in their lives, that you would draw them closer together, Lord, that you would strengthen marriages, whether they're married yet or will be in the future, or whether they're in the midst of a struggle in their relationship. I just pray, Lord, that you would move. The Holy Spirit is a cord of 3 in a relationship, Lord. You're right in the midst, Lord. And so I just pray that you'd be able to open the eyes, that people would see the truth of what you have for them, Lord, that you're calling them to something more, to lay down their lives for one another, Lord. And so I just pray for all of those couples that might see this or hear this in the future, Lord. We thank you so much for this time that we can spend together, and we pray all of this in your mighty, powerful, and precious name. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thanks very much for joining us. We want to encourage you to check out our website on toolsformarriage.com, or you can go to any of the social networks, type in Tools for Marriage, and you should be able to find us. We encourage you to check out some of our videos, but also give us feedback. You know, is there anything here that resonated with you?
You have any ideas?
Yeah. That's right. Any ideas that you might have for future episodes or questions that we might answer? We'd love to get some sort of viewer mail, and we'll take it from there.
And you can say, we're actors, so we're trying to like do these little scenes and stuff, and so it kind of making it fun getting these concepts.
That's right, and we want this to benefit people, and so think about those things that might be helpful to you, and sound off. Hope to hear from you soon. Thanks so much for joining in. Take care.